This is me, and of course, my trusted buddy and friend, Sophia Corker, and of course, we'll also have um, Denise Chambers. She'll be chiming in with us, another good friend of ours. She'll be chiming in just a moment. But we are discussing this week, of course, the book The People Factor by Pastor Van Moody. This book has been revolutionary in the area of relationships and how we view them and how we should handle them, and even get rid of some. And so this has been really just totally phenomenal. And this week we're talking about you can't be friends with everybody, the law of selectivity. And of course, also we'll be talking about the law of sacrifice. That's chapter 6. So we're gonna get right on into it and dive right into it. For me, when you look at how he even starts it off, one of the one of the powerful statements he makes right off the bat in chapter 5 to me, Sophia, is he says, people put their choices to a test. They often end up when they put their choices to a test. They often end up with the meal they enjoy. But he's talking about being selective, and he's likening the being selective to how we are when we go to a restaurant. And you look at the menu and you say to yourself, okay, I want this, I don't eat that because I don't like the way it tastes. And he goes to a myriad of how we play out what we're going to order from a restaurant in our mind. And it's so true how he correlates that to how we are with friends, that we're not that way. We are very selective when we eat a meal, but when it comes time for lifelong relationships, we're not as selective. We just kind of let them happen, and not only do we just let them happen, we don't nourish them if they're good, and we don't get rid of them if they're bad. And so he talks about being selective, knowing what suits you. Just like you don't eat any meal because um, it's not tasteful to your diet or to your liking. It should be the same way when it comes down to friends and people you decide to allow into your circle. And so for me, that's what kind of stood out to look at it from that viewpoint, um, to be intentional about looking at what you want. And when it comes down to friendships and looking at who they are, how they walk, how their character is, their interactions, look at all those things because they all matter into when it comes down to allowing them in. Because if you ignore something, then what will happen is it'll take you by surprise. And because you just wasn't paying attention and you wasn't selective about who it is you allow in your circle. What did it do for you?
I when I first read it, of course, the whole menu comparison made sense to me. But there was the statement that he made in there that when I read it, I was a little taken aback, right?
Hmm.
And the statement was, view the people in our lives almost as we view items on a menu as
Mm.
options. And so when I first read that, I was like, view people as options. I definitely understand it. I understand the concept. I understand why we have to be selective. Um, but at first it was counterintuitive to me. But then I realized that the reason he said view people as options is because he wanted us to realize that for close relationships, that we should be more selective, that we should look for who's going to add value in our lives. As a matter of fact, he says when we determine that certain people will add value to our lives, then we can choose to enter into relationships with them.
Right.
And so, that was something that I really had to come to grip with because, I think you have to balance, being authentic and being your true self and being open with people versus getting into close relationships with everybody. You can't do that simply because it's too much of an emotional investment. I think last week or maybe the week before we talked about the emotional investment or the cost that relationships have or bring with them, and the
Right.
fact that you really can't continue to make that investment um, on everybody. So that was something I kind of had to come to grips with, treating people as options, but they really are when you look at it, the fact that everyone can add value to your life.
Yeah, I think also for me that was key because we don't look at people as options.
I know.
I guess because you laugh at a joke together, or you like the same type of shoe or the same designer, you automatically feel as though it's something you have to do.
Mhm.
But it's not something you have to do. People that enter into your lives are an option until you decide. I'm gonna say
Mhm.
that again, until you decide that you want to make them something more than just an option. That you want to allow that person to be a part of your life for the long haul, for the long term. And so I think just like a menu, that it's options. It's nothing. They don't tell you, hey, they don't force you, hey, you gotta order this just because it's on sale today. It doesn't, and let me speak to that point. Just because somebody, when you find them, they're hurting, and you do a lot and you invest a lot of your time to get them to a place of healing, does not mean that you are, how can I say, that you are charged to keep them in your life or allow them behind the wall, so to say.
Mhm.
uh, at that point, they really are still an option now. They may not view you as an option, they may view you as a necessity.
Right. Right.
But I think we have to make sure that we draw the line and make sure that if that person is not someone that we see as our choice, that some verbiage needs, some conversation needs to be had to say, hey, you know, I'm glad I was able to help you. I was able to be there for you.
Mhm.
Um, but I do want to let you know that we are that I don't want to really take this further than where it is for me right now.
Right.
And it's just a way to say it because I think that's what happens. I think that's how we kind of get caught into the trap of it all. You meet somebody, or they meet you in a hurting place, and because they were able to help you, or vice versa, you feel as though they are now um, committed now to stay in. And the reality is the commitment was to help you get to the next level. And I think we have to realize that some people in our lives are only there for to get us to the next level. And we have to be selective in the fact that understand that just like when you have a meal. You ever had a meal at a restaurant and you thought you wanted it, but when you started to eat it, you decided in midstream, you know what, this is not what I really want.
Mhm.
Or it was what you wanted, but when you tasted it, your expectation of it wasn't what you thought it was.
Mhm.
It's so it's the same thing with people. It's still an option.
Right.
You can always say, Garcon, I need you to, this is not tasting like I thought it was going to taste. I thought it would be good. I know,
Right.
listen, here it is right here, Sophia. I know you recommended it, but I
Right.
don't, I'm not enjoying your recommendation.
Mhm.
And so we have to treat people the same way. I know you showed, you presented something to me that I had an expectation based on your presentation,
Mhm.
but um, after I got to the nuts and bolts of it all, I realized that we don't jive.
Mhm.
We're not jiving. And so to keep the peace between you and I, it's better that I don't select and decide that we're going to go to the next level in this relationship as a friend or whatever the case may be, be it employment, employee relationship, or whatever. It's best that we just keep this thing platonic. And there's nothing wrong, and I think people need to understand that there's nothing wrong with keeping things platonic. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with just keeping it just on the surface. It doesn't really have to go beyond that. And people who want more and try to force you behind that line that you're drawing are people who are selfish. This is just what I found out. They're selfish, they're needy, and most of all, the book talks about it later on. There's only one or two types of people in the world. Um, it's either takers or givers. And
Right.
so that person, by definition, would be a taker. And so, we have to understand that we're not, there's still options, no matter how long the relationship is going on, until it gets to that point where you make that final decision to say, hey, I'm gonna be in this thing no matter what. Then there's still an option. There's always a way out. There's
Right.
always a
Right.
way out.
And one important thing that he brings out is that he says, less is more. In other
Yeah.
words,
Yeah.
a few quality intimate relationships are better than a bunch of superficial relationships. And that's the thing that we have to remember, that one thing that he says, and you brought it out, those platonic relationships, or I think he calls them casual relationships. It says we are smart not to allow casual
Ah.
relationships to develop unless we have strong reasons to believe those relationships can become healthy and valuable. And so, it brings to mind, again, when he talks about that intimacy, we're talking about intimate relationships, where we let people, like you put it, behind that wall or behind that veil, and instead of just opening yourself to everyone, right? Everyone
Right.
can't handle that intimate relationship with you. And then to have an intimate relationship with everyone, which is what he brings out in this chapter, is not healthy for you. It's not healthy for you because everybody is not adding that value. And some may even be taking things away, you know? So it's the quality relationships that you want to find, not just, having a large number of relationships.
Yeah, I think we have to learn to live by that quality versus quantity.
Right.
Just because this person has a myriad of abilities or even gifts, and I think let me go there. When we can, everybody's gifted. Everybody has a plethora of gifts. So that's neither here nor there. But people have to understand that gifts are of God and are without repentance. So the gift, oftentimes, if not more times than that, have no connection to the character.
Right.
Have no connection to the character. It may have a somewhat connection to the personality, but not the character.
Hmm.
The character is who they really are. So we have to stop mistaking gifts
Hmm.
as as who they are, because then we look at, oh, they're so gifted, the
Hmm.
more instead of looking at, but they're selfish, or they only give to certain they only give when it benefits them.
Right.
you know I'll take a person that has a little, in the sense of they may not have a lot of money, or they may not have the capacity to be that shoulder to cry on when you
Hmm.
need them to, but they may be someone who knows how to speak faith in your life.
Right.
And so for me, that speaks more volumes than somebody who has a bunch of gifts and a bunch of stuff. Because here's the thing, people that are like that, which is there's nothing wrong with it, but when you have somebody like that, they may be getting pulled on in so many different directions where there's nothing left for you.
Hmm.
If that's somebody you've allowed in your space,
Right.
and vice versa. Because here's the thing I'm learning too as I read this book. You have to know and use not just common sense but spiritual discernment, whether or not the person that you've allowed in your space, that you obtain that same space in their lives.
Hmm.
Because it's a sad thing to think you're something that you're not,
Right.
and then you find yourself um, getting less but giving more.
Mm.
And you're
Yeah,
trying to I'm not trying to get into the sacrifice piece, but
I know. But
but
it's a logical next step, right?
right, it just kind of takes you there. So I think
Right.
it's so important that we understand that you don't have to, look for somebody who's a big giver, but just
Hmm.
find, or somebody that has a whole lot on their menu, but have somebody that has enough on their menu to say, you know what, that's a lot on this menu I like to eat.
Hmm.
There's a lot in this person's character that matches with what I need in my life, and
Right.
what I already have. And so when you look at it from that perspective, do you know I watched this show? For those who are watching, if you have cable, you may like it. If you watch Food Network or any one of those, this show called Restaurant Impossible.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's another one. No, that's the one. That's the one. Restaurant Impossible. And Robert Irvine, he comes in. One of my favorite chefs. He comes in and he takes a restaurant that's failing, and he flips it around.
Mhm.
So many shows I've seen where he would tell them. He said, your issue is not only did you cook bad food, but you
Mhm.
have too. Here it is. He says you had too much on the menu.
Hmm.
He says so you so focused on trying to give people a lot when they don't even desire all of that and you're failing, all they want, if you're going to be a Mediterranean restaurant, be Mediterranean. If you're going to be a mom and pop store, be a mom and pop store. Whatever you choose, whatever lane you decide to go down as far as who you're going to be as a restaurant, he's saying, listen, let's fine tune that and let's be
Mhm.
exactly that, but let's specialize what we have. When you talk about less is more, I'm afraid of people who trying to be so much, and what's the saying, Sophia? A jack of all trades, a master of
Right.
none.
That's right.
So you don't want to be somebody that's a jack of all trades. You can do a whole
Mhm.
bunch of stuff, but you've mastered ain't nothing. I'm gonna say this and let you go and let you do and let you speak. I had a good friend of mine at one time who could do. Oh my God, he could do a zillion things. He had like about seven. I'm not exaggerating. 7 businesses he was trying to start.
Mhm.
7. But his main thing that he does extremely well is drive buses and limos. That's his thing. The boy he's super gifted in that area. But because it wasn't getting him to where he wanted to be fast enough,
Mhm.
he started doing everything else to branch himself out. And what happened was he spread himself so thin to where he was not able to be the master in the area where he was best at. So when you talk about the less is more, I don't want to be connected to somebody who continues to spread themselves thin in life, but
Mhm.
understands what their gifts and what God has designed them to be. It's basically going back to one of the other chapters, knowing who you are.
Right.
Um, what God has designed you to be, and work on that thing and then move forward. I think that's so key. Again, you don't want to have too much on your menu because then people gonna be sitting there all day. The whole point of a restaurant is for you to go down, see what you want real fast, eat, and get out for the next people to sit down.
Mhm.
And when you have so much
Mhm.
in you as a person in your personality, then it's gonna take even longer time for somebody to connect with you.
Right. Right. One thing that he said is that he said all relationships matter because they can either promote you or
I do
demote
know
you.
you. Yeah.
And that was really key for me because he described people who engaged in so many relationships that they ended up hurt or wounded or damaged emotionally, and it's because these relationships were not casual relationships, but they opened themselves up. They were intimate with too many people and ended up being hurt. So it wasn't that it was not only that they were not being selective, but they weren't even taking the time to realize the character of these people that they were opening themselves up to.
Right.
And one other thing that he said was that people who are mature know that relationships require investment and maintenance. And so if you realize, okay, I only have so much of my time, so much of my energy that I can invest in these relationships, you realize, by the sheer nature of who you are, you
Hmm.
know, that you have to be, like you said before, more intentional about where you place those investments. There's only so much of you to go around, right? But if you're opening yourself up and you're being intimate with all of these people, how are you making quality investments in the relationships that matter? How are you maintaining the relationships that matter if there's so little of you to go around? There's so little time left. And so I think that's one thing that really stuck out to me is that the relationships will either promote you or demote you. And
Yeah.
so you have to be selective for that reason.
Old people used to say, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." Yeah, that's my somebody's calling me, but
Uh-huh.
let me decline it because I can answer my phone through my computer.
Oh, okay.
But I think that's so key. I think old people used to say, "Show me your friends, and I'll show you your future." And I
Mhm.
think it's so key that that's why it's so important, rather, that you choose and you select and you be selective about who your friends are. Because the reality
Right.
is this: I don't care who you are, man. If somebody's really your friend, then I can pretty much look at your group of friends, the people you hang with the most, your ride or die, so to say, and I can tell you where you end up. I mean, anybody can. It doesn't take rocket
Right.
science.
Right.
So that's why they're either gonna promote you or demote you because based on how you surround yourself with, if I put my kids in a school that, how can I say this? If I put my kids in a school where the kids are A B students, all of them A B students. I
Mhm.
don't care how slow my kid is before I put them in that school. If they
Mhm.
stand there long enough, it is going
Mhm.
to raise their level of thinking.
Mhm.
It's going to
Mhm.
think their grades are going to turn around. Why? Because when you are around better, you become better.
Right.
But when you are around bad, you become bad.
That's right.
And it's just what it is. I don't care who you are, what opinion you have about it. You cannot change that fact. Whatever you surround yourself in, you hear people say it all the time. Well, I'm a product of my environment. But the thing is, they say always, you don't have to be because your
That's right.
environment around you does not always dictate who you're going to become, but the
Mhm.
people around you will.
Mhm.
The people around you will. I can live in a neighborhood and still be different from everybody on my block. Because
Mhm.
just because you live in my block don't mean you in my hood. Do you understand? In
That's
my
right.
house. So I get to choose who I'm allowing in my door. Man, when I was coming
Mhm.
up, my dad didn't allow me to have no any kind of friend. Just because they stayed up the street.
Right.
I can only have friends that respected the house and abided by our rules.
Mhm.
I couldn't
That's
even go
right.
in my friend's house. I had to respect the house. Man, I was a really good friend of mine back in the day. We're not that close anymore, but when I was coming up, one of my friends, I think we were friends for 2 years, 3 years
Mhm.
before I even stepped 1 foot into his house.
Wow.
Because his dad did not allow any of his friends into his house.
Mhm.
Me and my brothers were the only ones to ever set foot in his house.
Wow.
And that took 2 years.
Hmm.
Nobody, he hung out with the whole neighborhood. It was about 15 of us. But the only people who was allowed in his house, his closest friend, was myself and well, really it was really me. My brothers were kind of byproduct of it because they were my brothers.
Mhm.
But nobody else was allowed in. His daddy did not allow it. And there's things that our Heavenly Father does not. People that our Heavenly Father don't want us to allow in our houses. And what
Right.
happens is we allow them in anyway, thinking Daddy sleep.
Right.
But we have a daddy that don't sleep nor slumber. So he
Mhm.
see exactly who you are allowing in, and he knows who's going to benefit you and who's not going to benefit you. See, my friend's dad was selective on who he allowed in his house because
Mhm.
he understood whoever I let in my house is going to affect my house.
Mhm.
It got to the point where he was taking me on, we was going on trips together with his dad.
Right.
But for the first 2 years or so,
Mhm.
man, the only thing I can do to his house is ring the doorbell and knock on the front door.
Wow.
I was
And see,
not allowed in.
that's a good lesson. That was a valuable lesson he learned your friend learned at an early age, right? Because
Hmm.
that's not something you're taught.
No.
Generally people are not taught to be selective. What they're taught is that you be nice to everybody. You be friends with everybody, right? Or at least that was my teaching, right? And
Right.
and one thing that he brought out is he said he's not advocating being arrogant or
That's it.
judgmental
That's
or
it.
or looking down at people by being selective. He's not saying that. He's saying, you're still cordial, you're still nice to people, right? You still smile and you say hello and you engage in these conversations, but those relationships are casual. They are not the intimate, close relationships from which you expect value and good health. You don't you know it's the expectation that you put on the relationship, and the investment of time and energy and exchange, right, that you have in those relationships, that he's saying you be selective about, right? You don't you be selective about, who you're going to be intimate or close friends with, right, versus these casual relationships where it's just your general nature, your
Right.
general kind nature. And he
Right.
was very specific about that. He said, I don't want you to think I'm advocating being arrogant. I wish I could find
Right.
it. um but he put it in there.
I see it. I got it. He says, I want to be clear. I want to clearly clear. Let me go ahead and put myself. Marie, he says, I want to clearly communicate what I mean, and what I do not mean by the word selectivity. Being selective simply means discerning, being discerning about people you allow into the inner circle of your life. It means you are kind, considerate, friendly to everyone you meet, but you do not want or nor attempt to develop meaningful relationships with everyone.
That's
Being
right.
selective about people who get close to you does not mean being arrogant,
That's
elusive,
it.
narrow-minded, judgmental, biased. It does not mean judging others or believing you are better than they are. It
Right.
means that you can be gracious and respectful to everyone. You can smile, say hello, express genuine interest in their well-being while keeping the relationship on the
On the
surface
surface
level
level. That's it.
instead of going deeper. Then I highlighted this part. Using wisdom and being selective means you are careful and deliberate about building relationships because you understand how important relationships are in your life today and to your future. It means that you are not willing to let the wrong people influence you in negative ways.
That's it.
And I think that's the key right there. I
That's it.
mean, I
Hmm.
mean, just because I'm nice does not
Hmm.
mean that we buddies.
Right.
I'm nice because I'm a son of
Right.
God. And,
Right.
and, and that's my responsibility. You don't have to walk around mean mugging everybody because you don't want them in your circle. But you,
Right.
you can walk around being like, this, oh man, come on. In church, there's a slew of people I was nice to,
Hmm.
but I
Hmm.
don't have their phone numbers. I don't hang out with them. And the relationship stops at church. That's just what it is.
Hmm.
Now, of course, if they call me and need some advice or whatever, I'm there for them. But I'm not about to tell you, man, this is what I'm not about to tell you. This is how my day went today, yesterday, and tomorrow. I mean,
Hmm.
because we're just here.
Hmm.
We're just here. Even when you start digging, you take the shovel and you got to hit that top ground before you get to the bottom ground. But
Hmm.
see, the thing is, you have to decide who you're gonna give your shovel to
Hmm.
and who you're gonna allow to dig and get to that place. And
Hmm.
so for me, it's just that. I think some people may be reading the book or even listen to some things that we talked about. So,
Yeah.
okay, I got to be selective. So, because I got to be selective, I'm about to give you the cold shoulder. No,
No.
it doesn't mean
That's
be
right.
mean. Be nice, be who you are, but you just don't let them in. Somebody may be saying, well, how do you don't let them in? If the Bible says, you got to be friends with everybody. No, the Bible don't say that. Find that. Show me
Right.
that scripture. That's not scripture. It says be equally yoked. That's what he's
Hmm.
saying. And just while you're being equally yoked, those are the people that you're equally yoked with are those individuals um, that are going to be, or that are going to be able to get into the next level in your relationship with you. Those are the people that you're going to be selective in choosing, and preferably they're the people who are going to choose you. Be selective about choosing you to allow them in. So it goes back to that less is more piece. It goes back to um, taking your time. I
Hmm.
don't know. I said this in one of our other chats. I don't know what it is about people, just people in general. It doesn't matter your color or your background. I don't know what it is about people in general that we feel like we have to have a whole entourage of friends.
Mm.
And the thing about it is that's kind of like
That's
I
true.
look at it like this. When you feel like you gotta have that many friends, one of them gonna throw a rock, but when you turn around and see who threw it, you won't be able to tell because you got too many.
Right.
Somebody might stab you in the back, but you may not be able to tell because you got too many.
Mm.
And that's what he talked about for me. I took that less is more all the way to the end. I was like, okay, I need less friends And that's gonna mean more to me than having a whole bunch, because having only a few people in your life, just a few that are close to you, you can manage that better.
Right.
You can manage it much better. I remember I was a manager at Walgreens for quite a few years, and I had to manage a team every night of about maybe 8 people.
Hmm.
And I look at how hard it was, or it wasn't hard, it was very challenging to manage 8 people on a regular job. Now I was able to do it because that was my job. I had good relationships with them. But imagine trying to have 8 strong, healthy relationships.
Mm.
That is very challenging.
Hmm.
But if you have that versus 3, 2, or even 1, if you
Right.
can put more time into it, which goes down to we might as well transfer into sacrifice,
Right.
because
Right.
we
Right.
kind of leading right into it. But it's all about investment. Because
Hmm.
once you select who you're going to allow in,
Hmm.
the next step is making that sacrifice, making that investment.
That's
And
right.
here's the thing: you don't want to make a bad investment, because
Right.
bad investments bring back zero return.
Hmm.
I don't play the stock market. I still have 1 or 2 stocks, but when you look at the stock market and you want to make an investment, you look at the past, you look at where they are now, and you look at the forecast of where they could be going.
Hmm.
And you make a decision on whether or not you're very selective, on whether or not, when I make this investment, how is it going to benefit myself and this company? Because when you put your money in it, you're helping them. And then they help you back by doing what they need to do to grow that company. So you have to look at people now as a company. Is this a company? No pun intended in using the word company. Is this the type of company I want to invest in? The type of company I want to put my time into, that's going to take me to the next level, and I can take them to the next level.
Hmm.
Because if it's not, then you don't want to waste your time. You want to get out quick.
Right.
And people get in romantic relationships, I feel bad for them when they don't. I don't know how Johnny left me. I don't know how he cheated on me. I don't know the signs are always there.
Right.
But if you choose to ignore them, then that's on you. It sounds harsh, but that's just a fact.
Hmm.
Don't make an investment until you've done your investigation,
That's right.
until you looked at the menu fully to make sure that everything is on that's on there is things that you want to be a part of your life, things that you want to allow into your life.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you definitely want to be selective again because there's only so much of you to go around,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that investment, every investment that you make, you want a return on it. But I think one of the hardest things that we do, when we talk about investment of time, energy, resources or what have you, when we do that with material things, we're very quick to measure, right? To measure or assess the true return that we get on that investment. But we don't do that with relationships.
No.
We don't take an objective look and assess whether or not we're getting a return on this relationship. We just don't do it. It doesn't sound nice to us, right?
Right.
So we go ahead and we continue investing time, we continue investing energy, we continue investing ourselves, and at the next time you look up, you have those emotional issues, like he mentioned earlier in that chapter, right? You have those emotional issues because you've gone through and you've given and you've given and you've given, and you never received any return.
Yeah.
There was never any value added. And the reason that that is the case is because we never measure. We never assess relationships, right?
No.
And the challenge that we have is, if you wanted to see the true value you're getting out of a relationship, how would you measure it? How do you measure the value you get out of a relationship? How do you know when a relationship is valuable? For you, it may be different. Your measure of value may be different than my measure of value, but how do you assess it? You know, a lot of us just haven't taken the time to see how do we tell that a relationship is valuable to us,
Mm.
right? And that's the grown up part. That's the mature part that
That's
we need
it.
to develop
Yeah.
to.
I think that's probably something. When we said it, do you realize that's one statement we have made consistently on every chat, that taking your time and thinking about the relationships that you have and those that you are potentially getting ready to have.
Hmm.
We do not intentionally say within our minds and within ourselves, these are the steps I need to take to make sure that this is going to be a productive relationship.
Hmm.
And there's different levels of it. There's just different levels of it.
Hmm.
Um, when it comes down to your work relationship, you don't have a choice in that matter. But even in your work relationship, you can still decide on how far in you allow them. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Every job has a core of responsibilities. So you get these core responsibilities and you say, okay, am I, and see your relationship, this time I'm tied in, your relationship to the person or to the boss or to your coworker, this is how you know whether or not you've allowed them too far in or whether or not you understand who they are and you just do it. Because here's the thing, you can have a work ethic that says, you know what, regardless of what this says, I'm going to go above and beyond because the Bible talks about do all that you do it as unto the Lord. So I'm working as
Right.
unto the Lord. So we should
Right.
always go above and beyond and do that piece. But um, after you go above and beyond in your lane, if Bobby Joe needs help, but your
Hmm.
relationship with Bobby Joe is just surface level, you may not go the extra mile for Bobby Joe because you're not on that level with Bobby Joe.
Hmm.
You feel me? But Bobby Joe is your a good coworker. Y'all have a great working relationship.
Hmm.
And watch this, Bobby Joe has to be the type of person that will do the same for you.
Right.
That's that it has to be reciprocated. Then
Hmm.
you'll go there and then okay, I'll do it for Bobby Joe because she would do it for me.
Hmm.
You know, but that's just a working relationship. But then when you go down into relationships that you truly have control over, like absolutely those personal day by day relationships, then you have to look at and he talks about at the end toward the end of this chapter 5, he talks about selectivity demands loyalty. You
Right.
know, um, if I've selected you to be on this level with me, then there
Hmm.
should be a level of loyalty that is apparent, very apparent.
Right.
If there's no loyalty, then there is no friendship. You
Hmm.
are being deceived. And is it? I hope I'm not going ahead. You might tell me if I am.
Mm.
But does
No.
he talk about? I think it's in this chapter. He talks about. Um, oh man, I lost my train of thought. He talks about the how we become friends with somebody or we allow
Hmm.
them in. And he
Hmm.
said to ask yourself this set of questions. And one of the questions uh, was, let me see if I can get to it right quick. Oh man, I think that might be the next one. That is, it's the next chapter. It's chapter 6.
Hmm.
Man, I want to get to it. I'm gonna jump to it anyway. But he talks because it kind of chimes in. He talks about if you and this is going to help somebody, if you're the type of person that's always nice, you're usually a giving person anyway, but then you become friends with somebody who's selfish, and then you become selfish, you're trying to figure out, how did I get here, how did I become something that I never was?
Hmm.
And so being connected to, I know I'm jumping over off subject into the next chapter, but let's
Yeah.
just go there.
Hmm.
um what happens is you start connecting and you start saying, well, because I've already invested this time, I'm obligated to stay here until they change.
Hmm.
And the truth of the matter is, you can't change anybody.
That's
Only,
right.
only God can do that. Only God can do that. And I think what happens is we overstay. We have, man, people are in relationships that have already expired.
Hmm.
But because, and when something expires, it starts smelling bad. It starts getting mold on it. And so some people are in moldy relationships and trying to figure out, why am I going through so much? I had before this person came in, I was so much better than this, and you feel stuck. Well, you feel stuck because you selected a person that didn't match you. There wasn't. We can go down the whole chapter, the whole book. It wasn't a win-win relationship. There was no
Right.
synergy. You had
Right.
nothing in common to begin with, or maybe on surface you did. When it came down to the things that mattered the most, there was no commonality. And so because you feel like you need this person, you hang on to them, you cling on to them, and you start to see yourself transition and change into somebody who you never was. And the real reality is that you who you really are not anyway. But
Mhm.
because you allowed them in and you allowed them to stay there for so long, you start becoming who they are versus
Mhm.
them becoming who you are. And I guess the question would be, why is it the stronger, the better personality would not be the more dominant personality?
Right. Right. We are faced as Christians with that question all the time, especially in working with kids. I know, you working with kids and being the youth pastor, and when you were here, and then even when I've worked in Sunday schools, kids want to know, why is it bad company corrupts good manners, but it's not the other way around, right? Good manners can't make, bad company better, and
Right.
that's a hard reality for kids to understand. But he mentioned something right here. He said not being selective in a relationship can be disastrous, right?
Yes.
And the example that he used was the what was it, the Joe Paterno and the
Yeah.
Sandusky, yeah, that whole incident. And he talked about how this man who had built a legacy, right? He had built a legacy, a football legacy, and
Yeah.
had all of these wins, had all of these great accolades, and you know, in a moment almost, right? Over a 2 year period, it was just torn down, right? Because he was involved, or he was in close relationship with his assistant, right? His
Right.
and did not report bad behavior when he had the opportunity to.
You covered it up.
So he covered it up. So being in this relationship and feeling obligated, to this relationship that he had made close, ended up being disastrous for him. And I think they said after he passed away at the age of 85, that they end up taking, vacating his wins, removing college scholarships, fining the school. I mean, it was disastrous.
Yeah, they had built a statue of him,
Right,
and
and it
and
took
they
it
took it
down.
down.
Yeah. So I mean, when relationships can go so far as to ruin the legacy that you're trying to leave behind for your family and loved ones, then you see the imperative behind being selective. You
Yeah.
have to be selective. There's no choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're gonna move on
Yeah.
to
Sacrifice.
sacrifice, the law of sacrifice. But I'm gonna close this section out by saying this. And I know for people who are watching, I'm gonna say, "Dang, they're just kind of jumping around a little bit." But it's so the two chapters really, when you look at it, now that I'm looking at it, they really intertwine. It's
Mhm.
almost hard to talk about one without the other. But I will close out this particular part by saying this. Being selective is going to happen whether you want to or not. But the better side of it all is the better way to do it is being selective intentionally versus being selective unconsciously. And that's how, when you're unconsciously selective, that means when you've allowed someone in your space, you unconsciously let them in. You selected them and let them in unconsciously, which means you're not aware of what you're doing. You created a bad trait. I talked about my friend earlier. His dad taught him early on that you have to be selective of who you let in your space. And he's still, I don't talk to him that often, but the things I'm looking at on Facebook and stuff, I can tell he's pretty much the same guy. He don't have a whole slew of friends, and his dad put that in him at an early age. Um, and my thing is, when you look at that, you have to be careful. You have to be intentional. I use that word a lot. You have to be intentional when it comes down to people you allow in your space. You have to almost interview them to make sure
Mm,
that they qualify to be where they want to be in your life.
that's
It's
right.
because here's the thing. I'm gonna just keep it all the way real. I'm a piece of work. I'm a piece of work. And I don't want anybody in my life who can't handle this work. Because you're gonna get this work. That's what
Mm,
it is.
hmm
And I
hmm
think we all are a piece of work. We all are trying to
That's
achieve and
right.
become better.
Hmm
One of my favorite artists, and I don't care what people think about her, but one of my favorite artists, I love her. I love her as a person, and from what I've seen through interviews, and um, I kind of ignore when people talk crazy about her. But Lauryn Hill has got to be one of my favorite people. Um, People don't realize it, but she's definitely a Christian. She's definitely in the kingdom. And the thing about it is, she said something in a video that I have. It's called Unplugged. She said, um, I had to reintroduce myself to my mother and my father because I'm just now learning me. And she said I had to reintroduce myself to everybody. She said because I didn't know me. So when you see me again, I'll be another person. When you see me after that, I'm gonna be another person because we constantly evolve as people. And she closed out her little piece by saying, "I'm a piece of work." And I think we have to look at ourselves. We are all a piece of work. We are made in God's image, but when man sinned and allowed sin into the world, then we have to all go back to being recreated and back into His image again. So that takes work. It takes people. It takes angels that we entertain unaware to come in our lives and help mold us into what God has created and designed us to be. So because I know I'm a piece of work, I'm not going to allow anybody else to come in with tools that I don't need and try to shape and mold me to somebody that I'm supposed to be, and they're gonna just basically make more work for the right person to come along.
Exactly.
So I think it's just wise to just for those who are watching, be selective. It's okay. The people
hmm
in your life, all of them, they're options. All of them. I don't care if they've been with you for 10 years. They're still options. And at any point, they can be. You may feel like they're not an option right now, but at any point, you could decide. You know what? You're an option.
Exactly.
Deuces. You're an option. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean,
Right.
the reality is we want to put up this facade and act like, okay, because they've been there for 10, 20 years, we gotta keep them. Who says that? Like,
Right.
where is that in the law? Even in the Bible, where does it show that we have to keep anybody in our lives? The only person that belongs in our life forever, once you get saved, is Jesus Christ.
hmm
That's it. Everybody else, they've been bought with a price by Christ, but you still got a receipt, and there's an option to send them back to Christ or keep them in your circle. So I think that's just one of the things we have to maintain. But
hmm
as we talk about now, the sacrifice piece, I
hmm
think that well, I'll let you kind of kick that part off. I'll talk for a minute.
Yeah. You know what? The one thing about the sacrifice piece, we get the point that we have to sacrifice, for other people. But one thing it talked about these close relationships, again, these intimate relationships, is that, just like we said, it must be a win-win situation. When it comes to sacrifice, both parties must be willing to sacrifice. And
Yes.
the sacrifice needs to be equal, right? Everybody has to be giving, right? Giving into that relationship, giving and making that investment of time and energy and investment of self, or else, it's really not a beneficial relationship. There's no way to uncover the synergies that we talked about before if everybody isn't giving into the relationship.
Right.
Or if one person is just taking, and it's not being considerate. And one thing that he said that really stuck with me is he said that where is it? I just saw it. It says, the only things we should never sacrifice for a relationship are integrity, character,
Yeah.
biblical principles, and
Principle.
our walks with God.
God. Yeah.
Aside from these priorities, everything
Everything
else is eligible
eligible
to be
to be
placed upon the altar of sacrifice.
sacrificed. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, once you have two people, right, that are willing to place everything on the altar except for those principles for each other, then you have a win-win relationship.
Yeah.
Then you can find out those synergies and begin to move on from there.
Right. And that's so true. I think you can't. You know what? We used to say this. You ever been somewhere and you want to get like, let's say, a meal with your best friend, and let's say it was something that was a particular entree that was real big, but you didn't
Hmm.
really want buy one for you and one for that person, so y'all split it. And
Hmm.
what would you end up saying? Let's go half on it.
Right.
I think that's the same way in relationships. That person, two people have to be willing to say, you know what, we're gonna go half on this.
Hmm.
We're gonna go half on it. You know, and I've done that. I've done, I've had friends in my past that I was really close to back in the days, and we go to the club or whatever, and it was time to get drinks. And it's funny, people in the world sometimes have a better concept of friendship than we do in the
Hmm.
church, and they would say, okay, I'll catch this round, you catch the next. And I mean, it's crazy, bad in there. I shouldn't use the drinking thing, but okay, y'all get it, whatever, grow up. Um, but but the thing is, it's kind of like, going out to eat. It's the same thing. It's not always even financial, but you have to have that give and take. You have to have that give and take. If and I was thinking about this when you were talking. I feel bad, brothers. Let me talk to the men because we always talking to the ladies. Brothers, if you out there and all the woman doing is taking, and she's not giving you anything, let me tell you what she talking. Let me tell you exactly what she's saying. Girl, he flew me to New York, and girl, he this, that, this, did this, that, and the other, and the third, and he always doing. And your girlfriend's gonna be like, okay, so you must be putting out. She be like, oh no, he ain't getting nothing. Da, 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 da. So you saying all of that. So what happens is he asks to marry you. You marry him, and then what happens is three, four, not even that, 3, 4 months or 3, 4 years later, whatever. At some point or another, because you are a taker,
Hmm.
that brother, I don't care who he is, what character he got, he gonna
Hmm.
start looking outside that window. He gonna find somebody outside the house, unfortunately, that's a giver as well. You realize a lot of men who cheat, they cheat because the other woman was a giver.
Hmm.
Not all the time, not all the time. But when it's somebody, when they leave one woman for another one, it's because that person is giving them something that they're lacking at home. And I'm
Hmm.
not even talking about take sex out your life. I'm talking about,
Right. Right. Right.
a brother or even a sister for that fact who's looking outside their windows because they're lacking something at home that they feel as though they need. Now, of course, it has different dynamics to that. We can go into a whole other subject, but right now we're talking about sacrifice. We're talking about giving. You have to have that give and take on both ends because if not, then it's going to be very disastrous for the giver.
Hmm.
For the giver, it's usually not that disastrous for the taker. It's usually not. Sometimes it may be, but usually not because the taker is just used to taking. And when they get through taking from you and you stop giving, they're gonna find somebody else. They're gonna find another sucker and
Right.
get them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right because that's their personality, that's their core,
That's their
right?
core.
And that's when we pulled from being selective, right? When you
Hmm.
have to take a look at that core to make sure that that's a person you want to be intimate with or close with, right? One thing that he talked about with making sacrifices is that he said there were two enemies of sacrifice, and that was comfort and convenience,
Hmm.
right? Comfort is when you become too familiar with something or someone, right? And that's in the case that you mentioned before about the taker, right? When you've been dating someone for a long time and they're taking and taking and taking, and then once you get married and they continue that, well, what it is they've become comfortable in that relationship. They're
That's good.
comfortable being a taker, you
Hmm.
know. And of course, I don't know if he says it here, but it's often said that familiarity breeds
Breeds
contempt,
contempt. Hmm.
right? So you end up hating the thing that you become so comfortable with, right? Because you're looking to see if there's more, and that's from the taker perspective, not necessarily the giver. So here the taker is now looking outside the relationship because they want more,
Hmm.
right? So it's just disastrous for everyone. And then the second enemy, he said, to the law of sacrifice was convenience.
Yeah.
right? Not being willing to sacrifice the time or sacrifice the resources or sacrifice self, right? If you're going to get a return, it's going to take an investment,
Yeah.
right? You can't get anything from zero, right? But another
Yeah.
zero.
Right.
and
Right.
so and so people have to be willing, um he says here, to defeat the enemies of comfort and convenience, because those will prevent the right sacrifice from taking place and prevent those relationships from being healthy, right?
Right. Comfort and convenience are a good person's evil twin enemies,
Mm,
because when somebody begins to get comfortable with you in the sense of complacency,
mm,
then they don't even desire more for you, let alone themselves.
right.
So now it becomes um, that blanket, that line that you used to walk around with all the time.
Hmm.
So you giving them security, you giving them comfort, you've given
Hmm.
them everything they need, the thing they can't live without, and
Hmm.
but at the same time you giving that to them, they feel stable, and they have a sense of stability while you have a sense of inadequacy.
Mm,
And then so not only do you have the comfort as an enemy, you now have complacency as an enemy, because you have become dependent and complacent by being just
mm,
that person's comfort. And see, here's the thing: we become the blanket, and we become the security blanket for that person. And so now you feel needed. And so because that person makes you feel needed, you don't even think about the fact that you've been giving, giving, giving. You don't even consider it that I've been, and you wonder why you constantly feel empty, and you don't feel fulfilled unless that person is taken from you. And
mm,
the issue is, you have to understand that they are an option, number one, and you know what you have. How can I? What word I want to use here? They are an option, and you have not only the right, but you have the responsibility to
mm.
lead that relationship. Because if you don't, you are going to find yourself one day waking up feeling like nothing, because you've allowed yourself become that blanket, that comfort. And then what was the other one? Comfort and
Convenience.
convenience. And so not only are they a comfort, but they're convenient. It's kind of like a convenience store. What is a convenience store for? It's to go when you need some things that you need right now. They don't carry big things. They just carry the bare necessities. So you're giving them their bare necessities, but you're lacking.
Mm,
And not only in the middle of convenience and comfort is always going to lie complacency. They come together. They come in a package. They come in a bundle deal. And so you have to say, you know what? I've been in this too long. I think it goes back to that one thing. People feel like they've been in it for so long. You're not forgot to switch over to me. They've been in it. They've been in it for so long, where is they feel like, well, I don't want to just stop here because I've already invested this much time.
mm.
I've already sacrificed this much. Wait a minute. Wait? That's even crazier, because if you already sacrificed 15 years, why do another 15? I'd rather start a day one with somebody who has more quality about themselves and build on that, versus do another 15 years to still get nothing. And then what's going to happen, at some point or another, they're going to leave you and get another sucker, because you're well going to run dry eventually. And I'm gonna keep calling them suckers, because you're gonna be a sucker until you make a decision that, hey, I'm not gonna be this way anymore. So until then, you are now labeled by me a sucker. Okay, it's what it is. But I'm just playing. Don't cry. Um, so the thing is, it's just so important that we understand it as a give and take, that you don't fall into the trap of comfort, that you don't fall into the trap of complacency, that you don't fall into the trap of convenience, because those traps are hard to get out of.
Mhm.
Because by the time because basically those are words really translate that you're being used.
Right.
You're being used, and nobody goes to a store
Mm.
unless it's a pawn shop and say, you know what, I want this used pair of jeans really bad. Unless you go into the Goodwill. You understand? And even then, they're washed and cleaned up at least. But you have to value yourself enough to say, you know what I have is valuable. What I offer is valuable, and I'm not going to continue to keep giving to someone who's not who's devaluing who I am by the way that they're acting and they're not giving as well.
Right. Right.
He says this. He says, and this is for everybody. There's no such thing as a free relationship.
Mm.
He said every relationship costs. He says it's like a bank account. If you do not put anything into it, you'll never get anything out of it. The way people prove beyond all doubt that they are serious about a relationship is that they are willing to sacrifice for it. And that, again, people hear the word sacrifice, I guess, because if you're church, you kind of go straight to the money thing. But I'll go a lot deeper than that. I mean, if you just left from across town and your friend needs a ride, and that's where they are, just where you left, and it's a 45-minute drive, then guess what? Because you're invested in this relationship, you'll drive back and go get him. I'll never forget, before we left and moved here to Colorado, excuse me, there was a friend of ours who needed something, and we were already way an hour, like a 45 to 50 minutes away. We had just left that side. And they were like, yo, I need, something just happened. I need you guys to come. So me, my wife, and all three of my kids in the car, a packed car, mind you, because we're getting ready to go drive to Alabama for 5 weeks and then fly here. We drove back across town 45, 50 minutes. Look, to get, 7 minutes away for them to say, oh, I'm good, I got a ride. Now,
Wow.
look, I had an option. I could have said, man, you using me. You're not right. You let me drive all this way. We was on it, and I told us, oh, okay, we're not. We was. I even let them know. I said, hey, we only like 7 minutes away. You sure you're good? I don't want to turn back around and you guys, whatever. He's like, no, we okay, man. I apologize. You had to drive so far. He didn't know we just left that side. I didn't tell him any of that. But it didn't matter to us because they are people who we consider real friends. Because here's the reality: the day before, they had just given to us because we needed somewhere to stay for one night because we had moved out of our house and we needed somewhere to stay for one night just so we can be closer to where we needed to be. And they allowed us to stay at their home. So they sacrificed and opened the doors of their house. We sacrificed and came to meet a need. Now we wasn't able to fulfill it, but to let them know and to show them that, hey, we're here for you. We're in this. That we see you as family like you see us as family. So that's what a relationship is. It's literally a mutual give and take.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
mutual give and take. It's not just a take. It's a mutual thing. So yeah, we had a little gap, but so what? They are our family, and guess what? If the shoe was on the other foot, we know without a shadow of a doubt they would have done the exact same thing.
Mm. And see,
So
that's good.
so you have to be willing to and see. But here's the thing: you have to know the person well enough to say, you know what, they're worth the investment.
Mm-hmm.
They're worth making this type of sacrifice. And so I didn't even, and had we not stayed at the house the night before, it would have been the same outcome. We'd have still done it because they have a proven track record that they're there for us. We have a proven track record that we're there for them.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I would say to people: allow time to progress and let it go smooth and slow, and you watch. And over time, situations will arise to whether or not you'll find out whether or not you know who they are. It won't take too long. It won't take too long at all.
Mm-hmm. And that's good. That's good. One thing that he said is that he said better than anything else a person can do, sacrifice expresses the fact that people are genuine and pure, and their desire for a growing relationship.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you brought out there, that by that mutual sacrifice, that mutual investment of time and resources and effort, people prove over the course of time that they are worthy of that intimate relationship,
Yeah.
right? They are worthy to go further. One equation that he put in here that I really liked is he said too much plus too soon plus too freely equals disaster,
I
right?
was I was just look. I'm sitting here looking at it, and I'm saying to myself, "That's where I'm going next."
I know.
Because we like right, keep going, you keep going. That's
But
exactly where I was going.
but it does, and it's so true. And he used the story of the prodigal son to prove it, and we all know that story. But it's so true, and we've seen it experienced in our lives that when we go into a relationship initially, because we don't allow time to season a relationship, to season the friendship, it's almost like we get starry eyed,
Yeah.
for lack of a better term. Even, and I'm not talking romantic relationships necessarily, but even with relationships that you have at church, or relationships that you have at work, right? You meet somebody, and you have that something in common. All of a sudden, you want to open up the world to them. Well, that's too soon, right?
Yeah.
That's too soon to start opening up your life and being intimate, have intimate conversations and intimate exchanges with people. No,
Hmm.
that can be casual.
Yeah.
That relationship that's new, that can be casual for a while until it's seasoned. And
Yeah.
then you can begin to do that investment of time, or investment of self, because the relationships cost, right? And you want to allow time to see if that person is going to make an equal investment of self,
Hmm.
just as you are. You want to make sure that it's reciprocated, like you said before.
Right.
So it's too much, too soon, and too freely. It'll equal disaster.
It'll equal disaster every day, all day, no matter how you do the math. Because he got
Right.
plus signs there. If you add this to that, you're gonna equal this. I mean, it's so true, man. You cannot, man. Don't put nitrous in your friendship. And for those who don't know what nitrous is what they use in race cars when they want to go real fast. If you see the movie Too Fast, Too Furious, they hit the little nitrous button and bam, they go. I had one of my clients was a race car promoter, and I went to a few races with him, and I was able to see it firsthand. That nitrous is no joke. It goes from 0 to 60 like that. And I think a lot of people do that. They put that nitrous in their relationship, and they want it to go from 0 to 60, and not realizing that you got in the car with no brakes.
Hmm.
And you trying to figure out, we're about to crash, what we gonna do? Wait a minute. You didn't inspect the car. All you saw was that it had something powerful in it, and you thought it was gonna get you somewhere great and somewhere. Take your time. There's no reason to go fast. You know? I feel like Talladega Nights, Ricky Bobby, I want to go fast, but my thing is, you have to be careful, man. When you can't, I mean, you wouldn't rush into God forbid, don't rush into a marriage that fast.
But
I
some
say
people
people,
do.
and some people, man, and I hope I'm wrong, but I would say a large percentage of those people end up in disastrous divorces.
Hmm.
Disastrous. I remember I had a guy tell me, um, he was with a girl for like 9 years. They had like 4 kids. He's like, yeah, man, I decided to finally go ahead on and marry her. It's like, wait a minute. You decided to just go ahead on and marry her. First of all, you was a taker the whole time. And I just looked at, I was like, when he told me he had married her, I was like, okay, well, I know they've been together unmarried for 9 years, but he didn't feel a sense of commitment. But now that he has to be committed, I pray God it lasts. But let me not speak against it.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, lo and behold, less than 2 years, divorce.
Wow.
Because when you make a decision haphazardly, and you say, well, I might as well stay with them because I've been with them this long, or I might as well keep them in my world because they've been there. I mean, who says that? You don't keep just it's frustrating. It's too much, too fast, too soon. Take your time. Make sure you check out every nook and cranny. Just make sure this person is right. I knew a guy. I mean a girl. I can't think of her name, but she used to have applications. She would give her dates. She would,
Wow.
yeah. She was, and it was meant to be comical, but she was dead serious. She's like, what's your 5-year plan?
Mm.
What's your credit score? She's. I mean, but you know what? As crazy as I thought that was, the reality is, what she was saying was, I just don't have time.
Mm.
I just don't have time. I still think it was a little nutty. I'm old fashioned. Get to know him because I can put anything on that paper.
Right.
Just because my credit score straight and I got a good job and I got a 5-year plan does not mean I ain't crazy.
That's true.
So and looking at life now, especially reading this book, when you talk about making these type of sacrifices, you have to spend. You know what? No matter how many chapters you read in this book, one of the common threads, is you're gonna have to take the time.
Hmm.
There's no way you're gonna get around taking time. Now, of course, there's those God designed relationships that just click right off top, and you just know. But that's rare, and it's not something that's gonna happen often. I think I wrote a note here. It says the plans and purpose of God in your life may have immeasurable and infinite value, and are worth every investment he asks you to make. And I wrote down here, you must believe in the person you invest. You can't, if you don't believe in the investment, then don't do it. If you don't have full faith in who it is you're going to put your time and energy into, then don't do it. Wait until you have the blessed assurance that when I put this time into this person, there's going to be some type of return. When we talked about, I wrote this note down. I want you to speak after this. Sacrifice helps you to appreciate the fruit of your investment and not take it for granted. It helps you appreciate it. If you get something too soon, too fast, there's no appreciation for it. And then you end up doing like the prodigal son did, and you lose it. You lose everything you was given because you wanted it right now. And just like our Father, although we think we have it all, He always has more. When you come back home and you realize, hey, now the Father had already made the investment,
Hmm.
and I guarantee you, He had a better son when He came back home. Yeah.
That's right. And one thing, so it makes you value that person when you invest your time. But one thing that was key that he pointed out was that it also sends a message to the other person that, hey, this relationship is valuable. It makes the other person realize, that the relationship is worth staying there for. Right?
Hmm.
It's worth valuing. And so as you are willing to invest more into it, a good relationship, that other person should be, ready
Yeah.
to invest in it as well. And so the process becomes reciprocal over and over again, right? You invest, they invest. But what you're doing, both of you are sending a message to each other that this relationship is valuable. It's worth
Yeah.
keeping. It's worth working towards, right?
Mhm.
And that's the message that you want to send out. You want to be valued, but you also want the other person to realize, hey, I value you,
Right.
right? And I think this relationship is worth investing in. And
Right.
here's my time, here's my energy, right? You
Right.
you send that message to the other person when you do that investment of your time and of yourself. And so I just think it's real good. But one thing, again, that he brought out that I thought was so key, right, is that a person's willingness to sacrifice for others says something about his relationship with God, his or her relationship with God.
Mm.
And so they were saying that it's because of your relationship that you have with God and your love for God that you are able to express that love to another person in a relationship. And so he talked about both the vertical and the horizontal relationships, how the two are intertwined, that you can't really have that vertical relationship or the horizontal relationship without having a vertical relationship, right? So it's all tied together, and it's
Right.
not one without the other.
Yeah. You can't if you wanna one of the sure ways to tell whether or not somebody is worth the investment and worth being selected is you check out their vertical relationship.
Hmm.
The vertical will always match the horizontal. Long term. Long
That's
term.
right. That's right.
It will always match the horizontal. If the vertical is crooked, then that horizontal will be crooked. I don't care how it starts off, how great
That's
it may
right.
appear in the beginning.
Hmm.
You'll see it. It's gonna show up,
Hmm.
and you have to check out their vertical. If they are a person that loves the Lord for real, then it's gonna be easier for them to love you because they understand what love is. They understand what giving is.
Hmm.
Um, you know, not to get on the whole tithing thing and giving thing in church, but people who don't give and who are not givers, they're not gonna give to you.
Right.
They're not. And even if they do, they're looking for an immediate return.
That's right.
And I'm not talking about a return as in you doing something for them. I'm talking about they're looking to get something out of it. Like their intentions are, I'm only doing it because I'm getting something out of it. See,
Hmm.
a real giver, a real sacrifice is to give without looking for a return. That's a sacrifice. I'm not looking for a return. But if we're both sacrificing, you automatically are reciprocating what it is you're putting out because you both have the same intentions.
Hmm.
Your intentions are right. And so, he says this, he says, the lesson here is that when God gives us something he sees as valuable in our lives, he often asks us to sacrifice for it because it ensures that we will cherish it, and handle it wisely. He knows that the more it costs us, the more highly we will esteem it.
Hmm.
And so, someone who sacrifices their time, because let me tell you something, for people who got money, it's easy to give money.
Right.
If you making six figures a year, um, you're in the triple digits. You're doing it like that. To give $100 to you may be nothing, but for somebody who's making 50,000 a year, to give $100 to you may be a major sacrifice. For someone who has a job that's very demanding and has a family, and they still come out to see how you are and check on you, they made a major sacrifice.
Hmm.
But when you make great sacrifices, you get great return.
Hmm.
And I'm learning as we talk. I'm learning that it's in the sacrifice where the synergy starts to happen, where things start to hit so hard, or mesh so hard, meet so well together, where you start seeing God bless on levels that you can't really explain. Then I think it only happens when you get to a place of sacrifice, or get to a place where you're being selfless,
Hmm.
and not selfish. I think to be honest, I really believe there's a lot of people out there who don't mind giving, but they've been so burned
Mm.
by giving because they chose the wrong people in the past.
Right.
The
They
thing
weren't
is,
selective.
they weren't selected. It's
Hmm.
okay to be who you are, but now use wisdom in doing that. Don't just off the bat just grab everybody you see and feel like you need to have a whole bunch of friends. We talked about that a while ago. You don't need a whole bunch of friends to feel complete. And if you're the type of person who always needs somebody around to feel complete, then you need to back up a minute and look at yourself and find out why that is. If you're the person that knows
Right.
somebody like that and you calling yourself their friend, and they're calling you a friend, and there's no sacrifice from them, then you need to back up for a minute and ask, why are you allowing it?
Hmm.
What is it in you that feels you need to stay there? And I know I was thinking about this earlier with the prodigal son. What if you're the father in a relationship,
Hmm.
the person who is used and mishandled and mistreated and disrespected? but you was able to mend that relationship back because you never stopped believing in who that person is. I'm gonna give you the answer right now. The answer to that is that was a relationship that already had covenant, and so although the son left and the son did his thing, at the end of the day, we still have to be open to forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
to discern whether or not that person deserves another chance or another opportunity in our lives again.
Mm-hmm.
The father had already forgiven him, I believe, when he left. But he
Right.
made the decision, you know what, I believe he's going to do right this time. I see that he's been through enough and he's learned his lesson. The father had evidence that the son had hit rock bottom and
Mm-hmm.
understood his mistakes. Don't allow people back in your life, and I hope if you're watching this video, you got to this point. Don't allow people in your life who come back in and you see no evidence of change, no evidence of remorse, no evidence of repentance, no evidence of man, I really didn't mean to do it. Man, I was immature. No evidence of maturity because the son coming back showed major maturity.
Mm-hmm.
It showed major humility. It showed that he learned his lesson. The thing he says while he's in the pit is I had more when I was in my father's house. I would be better off being in his house as a servant than where I am now. And when people come back in your life and they say, you know what, if I could just have some conversation with you, that's better than having no conversation with you. I realized my mistake. I was dead wrong. Daddy, just take me back. Friend, just take me back. And I think if we can get to a place where we can learn to forgive, because guess what? I guarantee you that that son was the best. He was much better of a son than he was before he left. Because now, but when he left, oh man, I just got major revelation. When he left as a young boy with no experience. When he came back as a young man with experience, which allowed him now to appreciate and value the
Mm-hmm.
friendship and connection that he had to his father.
Right.
So much so that he's celebrated and makes his son who was faithful and doing all he was supposed to do, the older son, he gets upset.
Mm-hmm.
But the father cannot, and the father told him, listen, why are you upset? You've been with me the whole time. You didn't have to have this same experience your son had, your brother had. You didn't go through any of what he been through. And so you see me celebrating him now, but trust me, the son cared less about the celebration. He was just happy he was back home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's a whole nother story about the older brother. He just, what his problem was? He was dealing with comfort, complacency, and
Right.
what's the other one?
Convenience.
Convenience. That was
Right.
his issue. He was dealing with comfort, complacency, and convenience, and he had no appreciation. Because here's the thing: when you go through something, you're not comfortable. You're not convenience is out the window, and you can't be complacent.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. But the prodigal son, had been through those things. He came back. So for people out there who had somebody who left and they're coming back, if they come back with the right attitude, the right mindset, the right demeanor, by
Mm-hmm.
all means, as a Christian, as a kingdom citizen, you have the responsibility to forgive them at the very least. And then you have the option, back to that word again, you have the
Option.
options.
Mm-hmm.
That person is an option to allow them back in. But
Mm-hmm.
don't allow them in so easy. Make sure unless the Lord unless they come back and you can see physically the hey and spiritually, hey, this person is not the same.
Right.
They've been through some things that have changed them around. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're that prodigal son, I hate to kind of be so long-winded, but if you're that prodigal son, you're the person that went away, and you know you need to go back to the person you wronged. Be big enough. You owe it to them at the very least, let them know that you know what, you were appreciated. I do appreciate you. You may not ever let me back in your life, but I need you to know that I appreciate you and that I apologize. And you never know, God could mend that relationship in ways and on levels you never would think. So yeah, I know I gave a whole sermonette, but
That's all right. But you know what? One thing when, thinking about the prodigal son and about the father is that once he came back and he realized that there was a character change in
hmm
his son, he as the father, he was willing to begin that investment all over again, right? Even though the son, the younger son, no longer really had an inheritance. Everything that the father had left was going to go to the older one. The father was still willing to invest his resources, killing the fatted calf. He was willing to nurture.
that's right.
And that's the thing that I want to bring out, is that once you assign or ascribe value to a relationship, to keep it going, to keep it maintained, to keep it lasting, you have to be willing to nurture it, to keep the lines of communication open, to keep building upon it, right? To keep
hmm
it moving on. And that's the thing that the father realized. He realized that, hey, there's been a character change, there's been a character shift here, and now it's time to continue to grow this relationship, to continue to grow my son. And he grew his son by continuing to nurture him, continuing to celebrate him, continuing to invest time and resources in him. And so we have
Yeah,
to be willing to, when we find the relationships that we value, when we find the relationships that are worth holding on to, right? This is the investment of time and resources and self is not a one-time thing.
yeah,
It's not, oh, I've invested so much in you, now where's the return, right? This is something you're continually feeding, you're continually nurturing over the
right,
course of time, to continue to send out that message that, hey, this relationship is valuable and I'm going to keep it going, right?
right,
Mhm.
right. You have to continue to give. I mean, um,
Right.
and you hit the nail on the head. That's where he kind of closes out that chapter. He says, sacrifice keeps relationships going, and when the sacrifice stops, the relationship tends to kind of slow back a little bit, and
Right.
you'll start seeing it come to a halt. Um, and you don't have to think about, oh, what I'm gonna sacrifice today. It just kind of happens naturally,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
A phone call in the middle of the day, uh, how you doing at the right moment. Those things are maybe some, and he talks about it. Sacrifice to you may not be a sacrifice to me,
Mhm.
but here's the thing. I think it's important that each person understands what the other person's definition of a sacrifice is.
Mhm.
I use this analogy a lot when I'm explaining certain things, and I think this is befitting. My wife, when we first got married, now I like electronics. I'm obviously, I've been, people who know me know I am nuts over electronics. And when I first got married, and for the first several years, whenever my wife's birthday or something came around, I would always get her something electronic. Now, it would benefit her. She liked it, but that wasn't the thing that made her the most happy. I could have something I've spent, man, I bought her one gift one year that was like about $4,000. And although she appreciated it and she still wears it all the time, um, I think had I given her a $500 full day, full blown maxed out day at the best massage parlor in the world, or in Atlanta at the time, that would have weighed just as much value to her as the jewelry I bought. For me, I based her necessity on me making her happy, my sacrifice, in other words, off of what I liked and not off of what she liked. So it's important to find out what does sacrifice mean to my friend?
Mhm.
What does it, and then they need to know, what does it mean for me? You can't go buy me a tie and think for you that's a big deal. For
Mhm.
me, I'm be like, okay, that's nice, appreciate it. Like I'm gonna appreciate it, I'm gonna like it. I love ties. But if you spending $900 on the tie, I mean $900 on the tie, but if you spending X amount of dollars on the tie and there's a TV that costs, I'm just using a tie as an example. Y'all know it's kind of bad. All right, let's say you spending X amount of dollars on a suit and there's a TV that costs the same thing, and I really like, this TV is new, it's innovative, then chances are I would have wanted the TV more than I wanted the suit. It's based. You have to know the other person well enough to understand what it means to them. Because here's the thing. I remember, and this is going. I hope this helps somebody when I say this.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, also early on in my marriage, um, I was doing. I thought I was doing a lot around the house, like just doing odd little things. And I was like, yeah, I'm washing dishes, I'm washing clothes, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But this is when the twins were babies. I wasn't really helping with the babies. So, but I thought all the other stuff I was doing was helping. To her, that's just like, no, that's not really helping, brother. You need to get in here and wash these babies and, do some more diapers. And, yes, I was doing it, but nowhere near as much as I should have been. Because my definition of sacrifice and help and assistance was not her definition of it. And so I was defeating the purpose. And then when the light finally came on and I finally got it, then I started seeing change in her behavior, her attitude, because then I was doing what it is she really needed me to do the most. So understand the other person's meaning and definition of things before you start thinking you're helping a lot. So Sophia, you and I both know there's people out there that's doing a whole lot for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not even, the other person you're doing it for don't even see the value in it.
Right.
Because by their definition, that's not sacrifice.
That's right.
So
That's
it's
right.
important to have that dialogue to figure out, okay, what does it mean to you? And now we at a point now, my wife and I can always use my wife for everything because we just my best friend, so that's what we do. But if now we talk a lot, so I'll be like, "Yo, did that? I did this the other day, but you didn't seem like you appreciated it." And she might say, "Well, yeah, I appreciate it. Oh, my bad. I'm so sorry." Da, 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 da. Or she might say, "Well, okay, my bad, but." So and then vice versa. But the thing is, you have to have that dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
If they're already in your circle and you've already selected them, then what's wrong with talking to them and finding out those things? It may feel like you're not paying them any attention, but it's better to ask and know than not ask and guess. Make your time quality and not quantity.
Mm-hmm.
As one of my bosses say when I was working for Walgreens, work smarter, not harder.
That's right. That's right. And that's so key. That's so key. That communication. You know what? When my husband and I first got married, I was more of a quiet type. And I really,
Really?
I can stop it. I say, yes, I could be in a room with somebody for hours and not say anything, and I'm good. I don't feel any kind of way. I don't feel, the urge to reach out and say anything. But to me, just being in the company or being, with somebody, just him just being our being together was enough for me. But that wasn't enough for him, right? He
Uh,
wanted that dialogue. He wanted that conversation. And so I got to the point where I had to force myself, right, to dialogue more with him, to communicate, even if he's just watching a game. Some men don't like to be disturbed when they're watching a game, but my husband actually likes to sit there and be a commentator to the game and explain every play and 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 do all of this stuff. And so I got to the point where when I went into the living room and he was watching the game, I'd sit there and I just let him commentate to me, right? Because I knew that's what he liked.
sacrifice.
You
Sacrifice.
know, that was the sacrifice. And so, I understood that that's what he wanted. right? Because I valued him. I valued my relationship with him. So I let him, I understood that and I made that sacrifice. But at the same time, I let him know, I communicated to him and let him know, hey, this is a sacrifice to me because I really don't like talking all that much. And so he understood that, hey, she's sacrificing. So it wasn't enough for me to make the sacrifice, but I had to help him understand that this
Understand.
is a sacrifice
Yes.
for me so that he would understand how much I was valuing him,
Yeah.
in my relationship with him.
That's so,
So,
man, that is so good. Because if you, and I didn't even think about it that way, but just like you have to find out what's the other person, because I'm thinking about being selfless, but at the same turn, when you do give out and put out that much, you need to let them know that for me, that's a sacrifice. It may not mean like a sacrifice to you, but for me, that means a lot. I don't really like washing all the clothes all the time. Like, I don't like doing it, but I do it because I want it. I'm doing it for you. This is for you. It's for you. So yeah, but your clothes in there too. But but I'm not just washing my clothes. I'm washing everybody's clothes for everybody. Yeah. But so the thing is, you don't. Here's the thing, and we gotta close out. But when you sacrifice, you don't mind doing it when you're sacrificing for the
right.
right one.
Hmm.
And that
Exactly.
goes beyond just marriage and courting,
Hmm.
but it's just any friendship. When it's the right person, you can do it every day, all day, because you know that they do the same for you and are doing the same thing for
Right.
you. So I
Right.
think it's so important, so key that we understand the dynamics of relationships when it comes down to being selective, and when it comes down to giving and sacrificing, because those are the things that are going to build your relationship to the next level or break you to the next level if you're choosing the wrong person. So I pray that people out there are tuning in and learning and gleaning from some things that we're sharing. We're not, you know, brainiacs in the sense that we know it all. But I believe we got a little experience under our belt. We've said something or shared something that's helping rather somebody. So next week we'll be dealing with what you don't know can hurt you. The
Right.
law against secrets. I know that's going to be a good one. And then of course the most valuable people aren't always the most visible. The law of true value. Now that should be real good. I might read those tonight. And we might, let me see, that's 7 and 8. Then we have 9 and 10. Then it goes into chapter 2 and chapter. Then really, we don't have that much left to go. We're almost to the end.
Hmm.
And we really don't have that much left to go. But I pray, guys who are watching, I hope that these chats that we've been doing week to week, every Monday, you can find us here at 9:30. Sometimes we come on a little late because we're waiting on other people to get on. That's the only reason why we'll chime in late. But we always do about an hour and a half at the most. And I know it's kind of lengthy, but trust me, I know for a fact that's something that we're sharing and saying that's helping people and taking them to the next level. Next level. Sophia, you had anything you want to close out with?
No, I think this whole session was really good, being selective, and just recognizing you have options. You have options for those intimate relationships. Not, we're not talking casual, but yes, intimate relationships, you have options, right? So choose wisely. And then
Hmm.
for those sacrifices, you know what? You're going to sacrifice for something you value. And then you're going to send a message that you do value it once you make that sacrifice. And so just continue to nurture, just continue to maintain those good relationships and keep them up to par. Maintain the value and the investment that you put in them over the course of time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
hmm.
Well said. Well said. So guys, we'll see you next week, 9:30 again. Uh, I'll try to move it early, but to be honest, I got kids that don't go to bed till 7:30. And I'm in Colorado, so I'm 2 hours behind. So I'm sorry if you kind of staying up late watching this. But hey, I hope it was worth your while. I got to sneeze, so we got to be out. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Peace out.